time. And don't always assume that a recipe is exactly the way it should be, because sometimes, unfortunately, certain things change, like how big is an egg? Like how long is a piece of string? You know? So there is an element of, I don't know why they call it common sense, because it's not necessarily that common, but there's an element of a pinch of this and a bit of that, and kind of dial into what you're doing. Got a little bit of baking powder in there, just a little pinch. Not too much baking powder, for certain reasons that we won't go into, but you can imagine when it does, it creates gas, doesn't it? Okay, moving on rapidly. Here we've got some flour, and a little buckwheat flour as well, just a little bit. This is extremely powerful, the flour here. It's like a sort of buckwheat flour on steroids out in Singapore, so I'm going to use a lot less than I would back at my place. Okay, so now we've got our whisk, and we're just going to gently bring the liquid ingredient, just nice and gently. It's a bit like making a Yorkshire pudding. So funny enough, a Yorkshire pudding, you always do the other way around. You add the flour to the liquid. You knew that? Fascinating, isn't it? I knew that would really grip you. Anyway, there we go. Now then, egg whites. We're going to whisk them up nicely, little bowl. Nice big fat balloon whisk, this is called, rather wonderful thing. And if you haven't had a workout, get the egg whites out. I've, in my time, tried to use egg whites as a substitute for shaving foam. And as you can see, it didn't really work, hence the stubble. But you just whisk them up, get a lot of air into this, light and fluffy, and you just keep going. And then we just combine all these ingredients together to make a lovely, simple Bellini base. I think I might leave you with that for a minute. And then, there we go. And then, a bit more of that, a bit more of that. Take a spatula. And we just get this lovely kind of gooey mixture here. And the idea, always when you're cooking, really, what you're trying to achieve, generally, is something that's nice and light. And that's the sort of, the modern way of cooking now, is to really just get things light. That's lovely, chef, that's good, that looks all right. So in these ones go. There we are. And that's really it. So we just combined egg yolks, milk, flour, and then very gently, we just fold the egg whites in. And whenever you see a recipe where it says folding in, it's something you really kind of get calm with it, because if you're feeling angry, frustrated, ferocious, food seems to sort of adopt your mood, unfortunately. And it's like, by God, you've made pancakes that taste like bricks. So you just, nice and gently, bring that together, really lovely and light. There we go. And what I should have done is turn this little thing on. And let's really hope this works. Yes. That's the last thing I thought just before I walked in here is I haven't checked any of the hogs. A little bit of oil, not too much. If those of you are counting calories, not that any of you in the audience look like you need to, but those of you who might be, oh yeah, got all the lines, you know. A tablespoon of oil is about 100 calories, so just watch out for that. But if you do like to indulge in oil, I suggest olive oil is a far superior thing to consume. It's a natural, and it's very good for you. You break it down very easily. So we've got a little bit of oil in there. What I want to do then is wipe that out, no doubt with at home I'd use just a little kitchen towel. So very, very lightly grease a pan. You want to get it just so it starts to smoke. And it's quite handy just to sort of understand the heat of the pan. It makes a lot of difference when you're cooking, just to understand what's going on. The moment it just starts to wisps of smoke, you've got to about 160 degrees. When it starts to smoke a bit more, you're about 180 degrees. When it bursts into a ball of flame and you panic, because you've left your pan on the stove, you're on about 230 degrees. And at that point, just turn the cooker off and stand back. And don't stop wheeling it around the kitchen like, oh my God, because you will set your house on fire. There we go. Those of you at missing home might wish to do that, but I wouldn't suggest it's such a good idea. Now, here we go. We turn this now. There we go. So once you see that little bit of smoke we've got there, 160 degrees, got some bubbles coming up in this little dough. And here we go. We just drop it into the pan. And it just very gently starts to cook and sizzle and bubble away. And this is when you think, you know, I've got half an hour to spare. I'm going to make some little bellinis and open a nice bottle of Dom Perignon and waste away the afternoon. Keith Floyd was a great advocate of drinking wine whilst cooking, and it's not such a bad thing to do. You know, a glass of wine, very nice. 2 glasses of wine, it starts to go wrong. 3 glasses of wine, it's a bit like driving. You really shouldn't do it, and you're going to get into trouble really at the end of the day. The other thing is, if you're ever hosting a dinner party, just keep it in mind that you might be on your 3rd glass when your guests are all on their 1st. So by the time they're on their 3rd, you're really not in sync with what's going on at all. And probably telling jokes that you shouldn't, and everyone else is still sober. So, see, we're just going to turn these over, nice and gently. There we are. And you just get a little light Bellini, it just puffs up nice and lightly. Chef's going to finish that off, and I think you've tucked into some earlier. The thing about these, you want them really to serve them nice and warm and quite quickly. Moving on quickly, I'm now going to make a risotto rice, which really has been adopted by the British. I know it's not necessarily an old school classic British dish, but it's such a popular dish. And the reason I'm doing this is, back in the day I used to be the head chef of Daphne's restaurant, Draper Avenue. There you go, chef. Pop them off. And it was very famous for when ladies went for lunch. Princess Diana was a regular customer there, used to come 3 times a week. I mentioned earlier, she always used to come with a friend of hers who was stick thin, and they each had their own strange ways of eating. I hope you don't adopt this today, but Princess Diana only ever ate half of what was on her plate, and her friend would spray fairy liquid all over the plate when she decided she should stop. Always had a bottle of fairy liquid in her bag. But you can guarantee that if you take the fairy liquid with you, and you go to a restaurant, you think, I think I should stop eating now, and you spray it all over the food, you will not pick off that plate again, will you? But for us in the kitchen, you know, we just tolerated all the strange and bizarre things. There was one gentleman who liked to have his fillet steak deep fried. Yeah, it was very difficult. But my job was just to get on with it, really. It's one of those sort of great saying, keep calm and carry on. But moving on, we've got these lovely ingredients for our risotto. I'm going to get some stock, hopefully here, which is somewhere or other out the back. And there it is. In we go. Nice and hot, that's what we're looking for. So we've got a nice little bit of stock. We've got a panel here. I'm going to get cooking. So, to make a good risotto, you start off with a little butter in the pan, just a little knob of butter. And if you concern yourself with, oh, I'm going to burn the butter, just a tiny little bit of oil stops the butter burning. If you do burn the butter, there's only 2 things you can do with burnt butter. One is pour it over a nice piece of pan-fried fish, very nice, with a squeeze of lemon juice and parsley, and the other is throw it in the bin. Don't be tempted to think, oh, it will be all right. It will be fine, it won't matter, because I can assure you that all you will taste is burnt butter. So we just let that melt nice and gently, and into that we're just going to add the base, the foundation for every dish really is chopped onions, what we do without them, and a little bit of garlic. And the thing about garlic, you think, oh, I don't know if I want that, you know, my breath will smell. It's all right, because everyone else's will as well. There we go. Right, let that just sizzle and bubble away. I'm going to find myself a wee wooden spoon somewhere. There we go, there we are. Well, no, it's not. If this was after 9 o'clock at night, that could be far more raunchy, but we haven't quite got there yet. Anyway, let's move on. Little bit of this, give it a good stir. And into that now, a bit of the asparagus stalks. So we're going to use some lovely fresh asparagus. In they go, it's just sizzling away. Some fresh thyme. Those of you that aren't that familiar with cooking, always fresh herbs. They give everything that little extra dynamic, that little bit more, you know. Just in that goes, wonderful. We just soften these down nicely. And that's the base to our risotto. And as they start to soften, we've got some arborio rice, little risotto rice, and we're going to add that You can't really make risotto with any other form of rice. You can try, and it won't work. And you would have made some sort of stodge. So best not, really. Just a little bit of risotto rice. It's amazing stuff, obviously. I mean, it only really grows in Italy, and it's very similar to pudding rice that you make a rice pudding with, and it's got quite a high starch content. What we do is just fry it in the butter. The idea of that is it seals the rice, just nicely seals in some of that starch so it doesn't become too gloopy. We just seal that off. We've got some wine, Chef, a little bit of wine. The lady's wine. I don't want to leave me pots and pans. There's a classic saying in the kitchen that a watched pot never boils. I can assure you that an unwatched rice always burns. So keep your eye on it. Oh, there we go. Is that nice? Smells nice? Lovely. Okay, so a little bit of wine, and then we just add the stock. And there is that thing that with risotto, oh, you should stand over it for 20 minutes stirring all the time, add a little bit, a little bit, little bit. You can do that if you live in southern Italy and there's absolutely nothing else to do at all in the world except stand staring into a pot, stirring your rice. But most of us sort of, especially here in Asia, it's a bit more snap, quick, quick. So what we do is just let it bubble away, boil away, have a sip of wine, radio's on. Don't go too far away or start having a big old chat on the phone because you ruin it. But I mean, you don't just have to stand there staring at it like this, which is extremely boring thing to do. Unless you might fancy yourself as a sort of mystic Meg, maybe reading the rice or something, I don't know. But we're just going to stir this up, and what we're trying to do is capture the starch in the rice. I'm really hoping in the kitchen out the back now, the boys and girls are cooking your version of this. Otherwise you're going to be sitting there for quite a long time. It takes a while to cook, but I'm sure they are. That was my cue. The word capture. Anyway, hopefully someone's helping. Yeah, get on with it. Here we are. There we are. I'd like to say just, whilst I'm watching my rice cook, a huge thank you to Sean, who's really looked after me while I've been out here. I've had so much fun in the last 6 days. We've had a few little drinks and dinners and things like that, and it's just been really lovely, and it's been such a pleasure being at the British Club. I was here at the weekend, which was really, I've got to be honest, it's mayhem actually. It was all happening everywhere on different levels and different floors. And I was quite amazed by the amount of talent amongst the members, because there's all these performing acts going on, and I didn't know. I thought, oh, Sean's managed to bring all these people in from all over the place that are all actually members. Ukuleles, saxophones, oboes, pianos, it was all happening, so it's really wonderful to see the vast array of talent. Now here's the healthy bit, little bit of vegetables, in they go. Takes away the guilt, doesn't it? The guilt is the butter, of course. Here we go. Knob of butter. Oh, that's a lot of butter. What is that really? Just a bit. And Parmesan. You might think, well, how English is Parmesan? Funny enough, it's now made in a little farm in Kent. They did call it Parmesan, they got in trouble. The European Court of Law had a DOAP on Parmesan, so they called it now Parmesan. It do indeed. And it's pretty much the same, and it's produced down there in a little farm in Kent. And Parmesan is made by soaking the balls of cheese in what they call a salina, a big salt bath. So this fella turned his swimming pool to his child's or children's avail into a salina for his cheese wheels that bob around under his covered shed.
Can only be British.
Only, I know, well, it's men in sheds, and women in sheds as well, isn't it? That's what we do. Right, little cheese, look at that, we've got a lovely, we made a little cream, the combination. It's not using cream, you never really use cream in a Parmesan, in a risotto, excuse me. It's just you mixing that little knob of butter and that little bit there of Parmesan. And here we go, we've got a nice light rice, so you don't want it too stodgy, you don't want it overcooked. Just a lovely little light rice, you don't want too much. We just pop it into there. It's just got a nice creamy texture. And then to finish that off, I'm hoping we've got one of those bee biscuits out here, but now, you might notice that on your plate there's a thing sticking out of it. It's not a piece of plaster that's fallen from the ceiling. It's actually a biscuit made out of Parmesan cheese, little bit of grated Parmesan on some greaseproof paper in a shape, pop it in the oven at 180, 3 minutes, pop it out, leave it to cool, and you've made a little cheese wafer. There we go. It's one of the highest herds, and the guy came to sell it to me, and he gave me a lot of spiel about being very high and so on and so forth. The other thing that really got it for me was Prince Charles is now the patron of the region and really promotes the lamb. And I don't know if any of you had a look at Twitter, but if not, you can go to Baines Chef, and you'll see a picture of me shaking hands with Prince Charles with a beaming smile on my face, which I couldn't actually take off my face. I was so delighted to meet him, which caught me rather by surprise, his smile. I think I looked rather like Jack Nicholson. My face just, I was so pleased, but I was really quite overwhelmed because, of course, of many of his talents, one of them definitely is his dress sense. Absolutely fantastic, the most amazing shoes I've ever seen in my life. Obviously handmade, I was extremely jealous. So we talked about shoes for quite a while. But one of the things that's so lovely about the Carmarthenshire lamb is it's so very high up, so the season's later and longer, which is rather superb. So we're going to cook this lamb dish, and it's a little bit different, the style of cooking it. I'm going to start off by cooking some beans, really, which is a lovely base to work with lamb. It makes a bit of an alternative to potatoes, you know, and just some nice beans. So I've got a pot on the go here. Again, we're sort of focusing on a very British style of cookery. So a little knob of butter and a little bit of oil just to start off with. It's quite a large knob of butter, actually, but there we go. You know, they're on the guilt. And then we just warm that through again. Don't let the butter burn, same old story. Here we go. And then in we go with some onions. Lovely, lovely. And we just soften them down quite steadily. There's always again, a sort of passion when people are cooking to want to go like the clappers. And it never pays any dividends, really, unless you're doing sort of Asian-style dishes where you're cooking things in an intense heat. And very, very quickly to capture the sort of the essence and the nutrients of the dish. But very much with European food, predominantly, if you do it nice and steadily and quite gently, you just get a much better flavour and taste out of the dish. Just gently cooking down the combination here of onions, a little bit of garlic goes in there, and just stirring them around. If you do want to use a plastic spatula, that's fine. Just don't leave it in the pot. There's many a spatula in my kitchen that's kind of slightly melted and gets thrown in the bin. Tend not to leave them all like that either. It's not such a good idea. But we just soften these down, nice and gently. Then once they start to soften, put a wee pinch of garlic. I haven't put any garlic in there yet. I always add the garlic a little bit later because garlic is 80% made up of oil. Of course, onions are 80% water. So you'll find that if you add the garlic at exactly the same time, it will just catch and burn a little bit and you get a very intense flavour. Some fresh thyme, just put it in the whole sticks, go in there. Give that a wee stir. And then our lovely beans, which should be here somewhere. Oh, we've got a bean puree, don't worry about that. Okay, so we're going to add a little touch of wine into that. And bring that up to the boil, let that cook down. While that's happening, bring the temperature up here. We've got a little lamb fillet. There we go, a touch of oil. And due to the kitchen here being so very efficient, they've already managed to sear my lamb fillet for me. So, well, what can you do? You know, you want to sear lamb fillet? There we go. Okay, so imagine this hasn't been seared. It's just a nice, best-selling fillet of lamb. Let's pop it in the pan. Why am I demonstrating this? Because I've just done what I'm telling you not to do, which is this. Everyone likes doing that. I see a lot of like, cooking shows with shaking the pans around and all that. Basically, every time you move the pan, you lose about 20 degrees temperature in the pan, okay? So you'll end up boiling the meat, which is not what you want to do when you seal meat. You just want to pop it in the pan. The other thing you'll do is you'll spray your entire kitchen with little beads of fat. All over the walls, the ceiling, all those little bits of objet d'art you might have sort of scattered around your cooking areas, you know, your chicken thing with bread in it and everything. Just get splattered with fat. So you don't really want to do that. You just very gently leave it in the pan, get a little bit of colour on the lamb, turn it over. You see, you want a nice coloration. Just a little colour there. pinch of salt, if we've got any, and there we go. We've got our lamb, that's looking superb. This is boiling down nicely. We'll take that off the heat now, and then we're going to transfer it at this point and braise it. So what I like to do is sort of think about the seasons, and especially here with the climate, you don't necessarily just want meat that's always roasted or in sort of grilled. You want something quite light. And this is what we're doing. We're going to just cook this in a little bit of lamb stock. So you seal it, get some colour on it, and then just poach it. Whatever you do, don't boil this, or you're going to make the toughest thing that you've ever eaten in your life. But if you just poach it, so poaching, you take it up to 90 degrees. If you've got a vac pack machine and a thermometer, you can cook this. Of course you don't have one of those. Someone might be tempted to buy one of those vacuum bags, you know, for storage. You plug your Hoover in and you can poach your lamb fillets in that. But to be honest, the traditional way would be to cook this at 90 degrees, so just below boiling point, and you just gently let it simmer away in the pan, nice and steadily, and that's all we do. So our bean base now, we've got these onions, very straightforward. You add your haricot beans to that, a little bit of stock, and let it bubble away for about 30 minutes. And then take a handheld blender. If you haven't got one of those, you can just puree it, and you make a lovely bean puree, which we've got here. So the old cliche, here's one I've done earlier. Bam. Yes. Here's one we've done earlier. So a little bean puree, so that's what we said. Don't let this boil, so we're going to turn this down a little bit. And just keep that poaching. We add a little bean puree into this. And then, again, sometimes you find things just a little bit too thick. I want to thin that down. And it's got quite a lot of flavour in this. Just a little water, we can thin it down. And a touch of olive oil into that. The lamb should now be nicely cooked. So we just by pushing it, and a little trick with meat, you think, well, how do you know how it's cooked from there? Is if you hold your hand like that and you push onto that part of your hand, that's rare, that's medium rare. So I'm just feeling the resistance. That's medium, medium well, well done. So that's how you can feel them like a steak, you know. And someone comes around your house and say, knock us up a steak, medium please. That's what you do. You think, right, it should feel like that. And you'll always have it spot on. So we've got our lamb in here. I'm just going to put that to one side. Probably set the tablecloth on fire. I'll leave that to you, chef. You need to worry about that. I'll work on this. And then we've got our lovely beans. And just, again, you don't want this stodgy. We want it nice and light, lots of flavour. And then we're going to finish off these beans with some raw vegetables cut into little cubes. So we've got some celery, some carrots, and some leeks. And the idea here is, again, it's light and it's fresh. We're capturing all the nutrients and flavour. And we just cook these vegetables very, very lightly and slowly into this. Cooking terminology, little cubes is known as a brunoise. You know, who cares? But it could be a useful thing. Oh, these are nice little cubes. Not little cubes, they're brunoise of vegetables. So we just mix that all up together. And we've got this lovely, lovely, lovely texture. Okay. And again, turn this down a wee bit, and we just cook this nice and gently. There we are. There, that's a wonderful thing. I was thinking the worst things that have ever happened to me relating to television is whenever you do a live cooking programme. I remember once I was cooking live on the BBC, and I had this enormous, wonderful Spanish earthenware pot, and I wanted to cook a very sort of traditional Spanish dish, which is pork cooked in cider and apples. And it's sort of from the Catalan type region. And I had this pot on the stove, and the idea was I'd put these ingredients in there and pop it into the oven and reveal, here's what I've done earlier on live TV. And at the moment I poured the cider into this huge pot, it exploded because someone had put the hob on, little to my knowledge, that this pot was sitting there at about 400 degrees. And on live television, with about 8 cameras around me, chatting away, full of beans, wha-bam, the whole thing exploded. And the initial thing I looked up, and of course all the cameramen had moved about 8 feet backwards. And the floor manager just looked at me and went, right, keep going, it's up to you now. So I had to think very quickly and decided I'll make hollandaise sauce. Which is what one did very quickly. And the other one I think was probably the most painful moment I've ever had on television was when the giggly man decided to come and visit And there's nothing worse than being on live TV when you cannot stop laughing. I was with Holly Willoughby doing Breakfast TV, and the two of us just giggled and giggled. And the reason for it was, of course, sometimes when you're cooking, there's a lot of sexual connotation in terminology of cooking food at the same time of what goes on in the bedroom. And I certainly didn't mean to, but one thing I think I started to say something like, I love doing Lorraine in the morning. Because I'd appeared on Lorraine quite regularly, and that was it. And she started to giggle, and that was so painful. And you've also got someone in your ear constantly telling you to stop it. It makes it worse. But what are we doing here? We've got these little carrots, look, these lovely little carrots, wild little carrots, and we're just going to warm them up. I've blanched them already, warm them up, finish them off with a pinch of cardamom, and really that's about it. We're going to put the dish together. Here is, funny enough, hollandaise sauce. This isn't the one that I made on live TV. And it's a beast of a thing to make at home. You can buy it. If you want to make it at home, good luck. There's many a recipe there. Hollandaise originally, of course, comes from Holland. Well, don't even bother. Don't go there. You'll just become extremely frustrated. And probably wake up with hollandaise on the ceiling. But it's a tricky thing to make, but you can do it, and just go online. Put Ed Baines hollandaise. There you go. It's not my middle name, by the way. Anyway, so you've got this lovely little bean puree, nice and light. We just put a little spoon of that. And the thing is, always remember, if you're doing a dinner party at home and you're serving 3 courses, you really don't need to go bonkers with the sort of the volume you put on the plate. You don't need great big farmer's portions. You've had a starter, you're going to have a dessert. You know, you just want a nice bit of food there. Then turn that round with a nice sharp knife. We're just going to slice the lamb into little pieces. And ideally, you want this nice and pink. I'd always put sort of 3 or 4 pieces. It's quite enough of the lamb. So we stroke that over there, and then just a little bit of the juice. So we're not going to serve this with a thick sauce. We're just going to make it really light. Again, trying to keep everything light. A little bit of stock. Just drizzle that over. There we go. You often wonder why, especially British chefs, use French terminology when they're doing something. And I always think it just sounds nice with food. Drizzle is like something that's happening with the weather. Nappe is what you do with a sauce. So we've just got a little bit of this hollandaise sauce, and in that we've put a touch of tarragon. And that tarragon aids the digestion. And we just literally just nappe a little bit of sauce over the lamb. And then we just bring that in a touch there. And then finally, very straightforward, we've got these lovely little wild carrots. And we just pop them on the side of the plate. So this is a lunchtime dish, very simple, not too complex. It involves wild carrots, beans with little vegetables in, a lovely, which is known as a sauce Charon when you add to the hollandaise. And Sharon, I know, it's Charon. It's like bouquet, bucket. Sharon. Lovely. I don't know if you can see that, that's what you're about to eat for lunch, ladies. Please continue. Don't let me disturb you. But I just to describe this dessert. It's a very, very British dessert. Very, very, very simple and easy to make. Okay, it's called a posset. That's a nice sounding name, isn't it? I've got a posset in my pocket. Anyway, the way to make it is quite similar. There's an Italian dessert which is basically known as a panna cotta. Okay, cooked milk. It translates into. And it's funny because something like a posset, it's a very, very old British dessert. It's very simple and it's very lovely and clean. And I think it's the sort of thing, especially with the climate out here, it's really nice, it's light, it's not too heavy, and it's really simple to make. It uses copious amounts of cream. So we start off with about a pint of double cream. There we go. And that will make one dessert. No, it won't. That will make about 6 desserts. Okay. It doesn't have any sugar in it, which is rather nice. we've involved some honey into the recipe, but it's one of those old British desserts, and it probably originates before even sugar was part of the sort of the diet. So before the discovery of the Caribbean and sugar cane and so on. And it really relies on acidity and honey. So another thing that it really involves is using lemon zest. So it's got this wonderful combination of honey and lemon, which is rather good if you've got a sore throat. It's wonderful. Lemon and honey is a great combination. And some old, very lovely little spices. So we've got a little bit of nutmeg in there, just a little pinch of nutmeg, and a little bit of mace. So honestly, this sort of takes you back, sort of, I'd suggest this would be a Tudor type recipe. It is indeed, is it? Yes. There we go. Thank you. Mace. It's also something people spray in your face when you badly behave. But there we go. Here we are. Now, I need a zester. Oh, I've got a zester. So a little bit of lemon zest goes into this. And what we're going to sort of do really is create a chemical reaction between lemon juice and cream. And when you put the two together, it starts to set. The acidity of the lemon and the lactose in the cream creates really a setting process. We're going to squeeze this. I'm just squeeze it through my hands. One of those, oh, haven't you got strong hands? Little lemon juice. I have washed my hands thoroughly. But I'm the only one that's going to be eating this particular posset. Probably best to use a sieve if you're going to serve it to guests. But there we go. So we just warm this through together and give it a little stir. And again, it's a golden rule, you know, the watched pot never boils. The unwatched cream always, always, always overflows, burns all over your pot, creates a catastrophic mess. And you'll spend an awful long time cleaning it, and if you've got domestic staff, they'll probably resign off the back of the mess you've made. So just a nice low heat, there we go, managed to turn it off, but it just comes to the boil, and that's all you want. And you see immediately the cream starts to firm up, and that's the combination. This is the easiest pudding in the world to do. Two reasons I've done this. The first really is because I think it's lovely, and it's simple, and it's very clean, and it's got lovely flavours. The second is the last international job I did was in South Africa, where they assured me that everything was done, chef. And I found myself out in the bush having to feed 350 people, so literally the only thing that was done was someone had led a herd of goats to the back of the tent and said, off you go, good luck. Where's the equipment? What equipment? So you never know, but of course out here things are extremely efficient, and Sean runs a very tight ship, and I have to say that I've been, really, it's been delightful working with the chaps here. It's been so helpful. So we're just going to add this cream, just like that, little at a time. Why don't you just pour it in? So I don't want to make a mess. I want to keep it nice and clean. And then you find out people just saying, oh, I'll just pour that in, it all goes up the edges. And they're like, oh, I'll start wiping it. By the time you do all of that, it takes you longer than just spooning it nice and gently. And even now it's starting to firm up. All you do is let that cool down, you pop it in the fridge. The thing that's nice about it, it's got a really lovely wibbly-wobbly kind of texture. So it's not too firm, very technical, that expression. Wibbledy-wobbledy. And one might think, what are you going to do with it now? Well, here's what, it's just nice, no gelatin in there, nothing else, just like that. So it's nice and soft and lovely. To serve with it, sometimes, something like a panna cotta, especially, you need to give it a bit more, a bit of a twist. So what we've got here is a hot pan, not too hot, and that is extremely hot, superheated it. I don't know what that is. Water. Very good. Let's cool this pan down a tad. You see, what would I do without Andrew? Really? Thank you. This is a very technical thing to do. It's taken years and years and years of learning. I've actually now worked out, I've been cooking pretty much, I started my apprenticeship 30 years ago. I know I don't look old enough, but I did. And, well, no, you don't agree. Okay. Someone said, do you ever get bored of cooking? And it's funny enough, I get bored of quite a lot of things in life, but cooking, certainly not. I get bored of doing this. Bloody won't cool down, will you? All right, let's get some honey in there. We've got a bit of water. I never get bored of cooking because it's constantly something that, once you start getting into it, it evolves. It's just constantly evolving all the time. All the time I'm learning. All the time you're seeing different things. And especially now with the whole sort of media side of the industry, travelling all over the world, seeing things, meeting people. It's just fantastic. It really is a very, very rewarding profession for me. The only thing, in hindsight, it is extremely hard work.
I'm sweating.
Oh, I don't mind that.
Sure.
But, a bit of talc. Fine. Talc and baby wipes, that's the answer. Anyway, here we go. Honey. So what we're doing is making a little sauce anglaise, custard, to us back home. Sauce anglaise is what the French call it. Again, it sounds lovely. We're going to make a little burnt honey custard. I say we because I've been trained. I've had media training. And the reason I say we is when it goes wrong, it's someone else's fault. I am going to make this. And we're going to burn the honey, but not completely burn it. We just want to caramelise it. And it gives it a nice sort of nuttiness. So it's not just super sweet. Again, this is sort of, beware of sugar, because it's terrible stuff, really, and it's so bad for us. But honey's lovely, it's much more natural. And we're just going to boil that down and allow it to just get a little touch of colour. But going back to that, no, cooking is something I never get bored of. And funny enough, I own and run a restaurant around Glenalbyn in central London. It's extremely busy and very demanding. And the key to running a good restaurant is attention to detail all the time. As a restaurateur, you're looking at every single detail, right down to sort of the meat on the toilets of the skirting boards have to be, I mean, everything has to be correct all the time. But there is those moments I spend quite a lot of time in the office, and now and again I have to get back into the kitchen. There's only so many emails one can read before you start going insane. So it's something that still I'm very passionate about. And people ask me, you know, when I'm at home, do I still do the cooking? And at the weekends, I always tend to do the cooking. So I try to avoid working at the weekends now. And just love it. You know, it's a fantastic thing. My wife is actually a vegetarian, which is quite painful for me, but that's how it is. And I have a huge barbecue now in the garden, and rain or shine, you'll find me out there because I'm not allowed to cook any meat in the house. So I'm out there in all conditions. Underneath the wisteria, there's the barbecue, cooking for myself and the little ones. Okay, now we're going to just, you see this is just starting to bubble now. It's a caramelisation, it's just starting to get a bit of colour. And so as not to burn this custard, take it off the heat, just let it cool down a little bit. Otherwise you get this sort of strange chemical reaction if you add the custard in while it's really going for it. And we just make this lovely, lovely sort of caramel, sweet, rich custard. And there we go, that's perfect. Give that a swirl about. And what one would like to do is let this cool down. But it's going to be here for ages. If you ever do want to cool something very quickly when you're cooking, get a bowl full of ice, pop this into a bowl, into the ice, and bingo, it'll be cold in no time at all. We don't have one of those. So what we're going to do is just pour this, or spoon it very lightly. And obviously if this was cold, it would sit on there and set very quickly. And it's a little top, so it makes a touch of difference. Just over the top there. There we are. That's our dessert. And then we just serve that with a little madeleine on the side. And those of you that have bought my cookbook will find some sensational recipes in there, I hope. And I have to say that the last 22 books available of the first edition. Okay, so you never know if I have an enormous accident in the next 10 years, you can probably hold something of great value there. We really struggled. We only managed to get that many copies, and that's it. That literally is it now. It's a terribly difficult book to get hold of. I'm hounding the publisher to go into second edition. But it's a great book, and it's eclectic, and it's about what people eat in Britain today, with recipes that actually do work. They've all been tested really methodically, and they work. So, you know, good luck for those who want the book. Anyway, thank you very much. Thank you. It's been a real pleasure, guys. I'll be finding some books later for those who want them, and you know, we'll see you throughout the afternoon. Thank you so much. It's been a wonderful, wonderful occasion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Celebrity Chef at Baines, ladies and gentlemen.